Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen, Shane Dale, and we're starting off right in the first segment to have our buddy Aaron Torres, who is the most opinionated basketball guy that we've ever had on this show, join us. And by the way, I just want to point out he has a new Twitter account, Torres on Arizona. It's at Torres on Arizona. And by the way, before we bring him on, I just want to say, Aaron, the fact that you followed Shane and I among your first follows was a big thrill for me and made me all excited. So thank you for doing that. Glad to have you on the show. Arizona just lost to Tennessee, 77-73. Just initially, your thoughts. This Wildcat team is, I still think they're national championship caliber. Do you agree?
Well, first of all, I followed you guys. You guys are the Ben Matherin and Tabellis of Twitter on Arizona Twitter. Listen, I'm still new to the Arizona Twitter scene, and I've started kind of as I've kind of expanded my career, these team specific accounts, but Arizona fans have always been great to me. I think I've been respectful of the program, and I think I've said some things about the program that a lot of people wouldn't over the years, but I appreciate what you guys have done for me, what Arizona fans have supported me. But my takeaways are pretty much the same as everybody else's. Is it was a weird game. It was a sloppy game. Eric, I just saw you tweet that, I think, Eric, I just happened while I was logging on to see what you said. And I think it's kind of my encapsulation of what I saw tonight, which was a very poorly officiated game. I'll be honest, I literally walked to the bathroom for 2 seconds and I missed the Kirk Risa technical foul, which maybe you guys get. I sent a few texts and I was told it was amongst the most absurd technicals that has ever been given out among college basketball. But listen, it's also partly, you fall down whatever it was, 22-9 in the first half. And listen, it's college basketball, and it's cliche, but this isn't college football. If you lose one game, your season's not over. Far from it. The totality of what Arizona has done leading into the Christmas break, with obviously, knock on wood, hopefully 2 huge games coming out of Christmas going into the new year, it's incredible. But obviously, there's that balance of you're very happy with where you are, you're very happy with where the team is, you're very happy with exactly what you said, Eric, about what this team is capable of over the next 3.5 months. But it's also disappointing because there was a lot of shoddy officiating, there was a lot of questionable stuff. And it was a game that, despite everything that I said about the beginning of the game, you could have won on the road. It obviously would have been a second super marquee road win. So I'd love to come in with some fiery, blistering hot take, but I kind of had the same reaction to just seeing what you guys did, what you guys had to say. I had much the same reaction as well.
Yeah, it's just incredibly frustrating, Aaron. It's when you look at what this team did in coming. What was it, like 16-2? They come back, they get it to they got it tied. The frustrating thing for me, and I don't want to just sit here and pick on the officiating all night because it was a bunch of crap. It was horrible, and I'm about to use a bad word to describe. When Dan Wolken, who I probably disagree with 75% or more of things that he tweets, says that it was the worst officiated game of the decade, and I completely agree, at least from what I've watched, that's when things are really bad. But Shane, this was as bad a loss just from an officiating point of view as we've seen for an Arizona game in a long time.
Well, first of all, Aaron, if we're Matherin and Tabellis, I hope I get to be Matherin after the game
you
just
are.
had.
You are. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One of them couple to the last minute of the game, but that's neither here nor there. 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, a couple things. I don't know if you all saw the very last couple seconds. Tennessee tried to foul Arizona on a half-court shot at the buzzer. I don't know why, but they did, and the officials didn't call it. That summarizes pretty much how this game went. Okay, and I absolutely despise, excuse me, having to blaming the officials for a loss. I hate it. But when you see guys who don't have a dog in the fight, universally saying this was one-sided, this was awful officiating, it went one way, that tells you something. So I think we can all agree that it was not good. Would it have been a different result if it had been better? Maybe. Could Arizona also shot itself in the foot in the first half, like you said? But I'll tell you guys, this is their first loss of the season, and I've never been more certain that this team is championship contender because they fell behind in the first half. They looked awful. They could not make a shot. They turned the ball over. They had more turnovers and field goals for a good chunk of the first half. Maybe they ended the first half like that. And then, of course, you had the questionable, to put it nicely, officiating throughout the game, and they were still right there. So that is very encouraging to me, especially with an 8-man rotation. What concerns me long term is, and we talked about this, I think, on last week's podcast, Derek, their 9th guy off the bench, Kim Aiken, or their 4th guy off the bench, 9th player in the rotation, Kim Aiken Jr., is out for personal reasons. We don't know why. We don't know when he's going to return. They could have used that 9th body in this game. With a couple of guys with 3 fouls early and then 4 fouls, like every guy in the roster had 4 fouls by the end of the game or had fouled out. You need a guy who could eat up some minutes, maybe even make a couple of big threes, make some good defensive plays. That could have been the difference between a win and a loss in this game. I mentioned that I feel like at some point Aiken's presence was going to cost Arizona a win, and I think it might have been tonight. So yes, this team is still very good with an 8-man roster, but that's very thin. That's a razor thin, especially in a game like this. Regardless of the officiating, you're going to have games like this where you need that 9th guy. Hopefully Aiken comes back sooner rather than later. We have no idea when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen, but hopefully he'll be able to return. That does concern me long-term, even though he's not as impactful a guy, obviously, as the starting rotation.
Aaron, when you look at this game, do you think that Arizona is penalized by this loss, or is this a good loss as far as seeding comes in the NCAA tournament?
No, I mean, listen, I think it's the opposite. I mean, as weird, listen, you never want to lose a game, right? But as weird as it sounds, in the current climate that we're in, and I have a lot of opinions on that, which we don't have to share right now because I don't want to turn off all your audience. The fact that this game got in, that everybody was fully healthy, and that minus a player here or there, but there was no major whatever reasons to hold players out. I think it's a net positive, and you guys might know better than this, but the fact that this program, I don't know if it was Sean Miller previously, if it was Tommy Lloyd when he got there, was willing to go to Arizona, was willing to go to Tennessee. And I think it's such an important point, like to Tennessee 3 days before Christmas. I'm a UConn alum. I was watching UConn. They had a Big East game on Tuesday night, and the announcers were talking about how hard it is to get a team locked in around this time of year because, you've been grinding and now players are practicing in the summer, players are practicing in the fall. You have official practice starting in October. And by this time of year, everybody's kind of ground down and you want a day or 2 or 3 off. And so, no, I don't think in any way, shape or form, Eric, that it's going to be held against them. I mean, the only way it could be held against them is if Tennessee completely falls apart and all of a sudden, this quote unquote doesn't look like a good loss in 3, 4, 5 weeks, 2 months, whatever it ends up being come selection Sunday time. But no, I think that, in where we are in college basketball with a million neutral site games, with everybody kind of trying to game the system scheduling wise to look good in the computer rankings, to have these true road games in the out of conference, on top of what's going to happen in the Pac-12, by the way. And I know I mentioned it a minute ago, but the 2 games in LA here in the coming week or so, 10 days, assuming that the games get in, I think Arizona needs to be credited for going to Tennessee, even despite the loss. I know I said it a minute ago, but I think sometimes we all love college football and we love college basketball, and we take that kind of college football mindset of every loss is the end of the world. But at the end of the day, 1, there's stuff to learn from this. 2, you get better, whatever. But 3, just to go on the road for this game, I think is a total net positive, and I think there's zero doubt that it's going to help this team as they get ready for Pac-12 play.
Yeah, and I think one thing, Aaron, that stood out to me, and Shane, your thoughts on this, Arizona was flustered at the start. I mean, 9 turnovers in the first 8 minutes. They did not do well with a defense that was suffocating like Tennessee, and they made the in-game adjustments, and that's what successful teams do. They kind of figure things out mid-game, as Arizona did in the second half. They did kind of towards the end of the first half. Then Tennessee went on a late run in the last minute, kind of some dumb plays. Pelle Larson had a layup when he should have backed the ball out and he missed it, but that's beside the point. This was a team that made adjustments at halftime, got it to a tie game, which if you asked me 7 minutes in, I would have told you were crazy that Arizona would ever get there. So that to me is encouraging. Aside from the officiating, I mean, the fact that Arizona was able to bounce back, Shane, I mean, that makes me feel really good about things going forward.
Well, you think back to really starting with the Illinois game. This team has gotten off to some slow starts. They were down double digits to Illinois, and they came back and won that one. Northern Colorado, they struggled in the first half. They were down double digits to Cal Baptist at home last week before they won by 20 some odd points. So maybe this is a team that just starts off slow, or maybe this is a team that realizes, okay, we can't keep starting off slow and expect to win. So I'm actually okay with this team being a little perturbed, to say the least, going into Christmas and having that week to think about it going into these LA games, which do hopefully do happen. And by the way, Aaron, we won't get into it too much, like you said, but let's just say I'm thankful that our sports media is not just one chorus saying the same thing. I'm glad that you like to speak your mind and go kind of the other way on certain things, including COVID protocol. I appreciate that. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, I don't think this is necessarily going to cost Arizona a 1 seed or a seed line going into the NCAA tournament. I don't think it's a bad loss in any way. I think Tennessee will continue to be very good throughout the season. I think in a neutral court, Arizona would have won this game, and I wouldn't mind Arizona got another crack at the Volunteers at some point. So not concerned long term. I think I'm very interested to see how this team is going to come out after Christmas and after their first loss of the season, their first real taste of adversity following a game, and see how they come out. And if they, I don't know what to expect going into the UCLA game. I love they get another quick test right away. I know we talked about how are they going to do in those games? Are they going to go 2-2, 4-0? Before the Illinois game, we were all be happy with 2-2, and then they beat Illinois, and we're all thinking, oh, 4-0. Time to temper our expectations. They could easily be 0-2 so far in that stretch. They could easily be 2-0. They're right in the middle. I am convinced, as like I said, as I have at any point in the season, that this team is at least Final Four caliber, pending health, pending COVID protocols, all the wild cards that are thrown in. Hopefully, they get Kim Aiken back. I am concerned that Tubelis and Koloko were non-existent on the offensive end for a good chunk of that game. I think that's kind of a blip on the radar. And Matherin picked them up when they were down. So that's encouraging as well.
And the fact that Arizona was in the game and had a chance to win with those guys doing nothing, Shane, which is encouraging. Aaron, I want to step back for a second. What were your expectations for Arizona at the beginning of the year? Obviously, college basketball with the best of them. So what were your expectations before the season started? And now, what are your expectations for this team?
It's really funny. I was talking to somebody about this today. I try to watch as much as I can, and you get stuff right, you get stuff wrong. And it was funny because I remember dating back to the day. So first of all, I watch everything. And I watched Arizona last year when there was an NCAA tournament ban, and you win at UCLA or USC, the second to last game of the season. We know how good USC season ended up, and you kind of start doing the mental math of a lot of these guys, all of these guys may be back. And so I remember I put out my preseason top 25 the day the 2021 season ended with Gonzaga Baylor. And I think I had Arizona somewhere in the top 10. And Arizona fans were saying this was kind of at the time where you started to realize that maybe you guys knew before, but I, from the outside, started to realize Sean Miller might not be back to coach whoever's back. And so I bring that up to say I was really high on them coming out of the season. And then you have the coaching change, and then you lose James Akinjo. And so at that point, I thought, okay, fringe top 25. Obviously, I know Kirk Risa played a little bit last year, but I don't remember a ton of what he did or what he showed last season after he came back from whatever it was, NCAA stuff, overseas, all that. But I thought I liked Ben Matherin, I liked Tubelis, I liked Koloko, but I thought, okay, without Akinjo is kind of the glue that holds it all together. This is, they're top 25, top 30 team coming into the year. And I'll tell you, I mean, it really, I'll be honest, guys, and I could probably pull up a tweet that verifies this. It was about 7 minutes into that Wichita State game, which was the first chance that I got to see them, that I said, whoa, wait a second now. And I think it was really kind of three things that jumped out to me. One, as you guys just discussed, Ben Matherin's a different dude. And I give him so much credit because you guys know his story, and anybody listening knows his story. Like, he could have gone pro last year and he could maybe be somewhere in the G League, with the COVID protocols, maybe bouncing up to the NBA right now. But it would have been a grind. But he probably would have gotten drafted, whatever. But you see right away he's a completely different dude. Two, so I might just be catching him at the right times. I love what Pella or however you pronounce his name, Larson brings to this team is kind of that versatile big guy. No, Eric, am I wrong? Am I just catching him at the right time? I see you shaking your head, so tell me I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
he does not make mentally. I don't think he's there yet. He's got some
Okay,
skills. He's
that's
a good
okay.
shooter. I don't love his decision making. How about that?
No, it's totally fair, and but I think he's another piece, and he replace as a playmaker, he can replace a little bit about what Akinjo did last year, but not comparing him to an All Pac-12 point guard, whatever. But
No.
then three, and I think this might be something that I spoke with one of you guys about privately. I can't remember, but you start to realize, and anybody who's listened to me previously on your guys' podcast, I kind of defended Sean Miller because I thought some of the perception of what he did versus what he was accused of was unfair. But I bring it up because in that Wichita State game, you start to realize the pieces that were left over with how Tommy Lloyd wants to play is like, wow. Like you talk about just puzzle pieces fitting together of just the talents there, and now you have a system that is going to really highlight the talent of the pieces that are there. And then again, he added some pieces in the offseason, used a couple guys, whatever. And so that's a really super long-winded way of me saying, by the end of the Wichita State game, I thought this is a really good team, probably top 15 in the country. I will tell you guys, I may have texted a professional bettor of mine, a friend of mine that lives in Vegas, knowing they were going to play Michigan, and I was a little lower on Michigan coming into the year, saying, I don't know what the line's going to be when they play, but jump on that the first chance that you get. And then really the Illinois game was when you start to realize, okay, like top 10, no. Like this is a team that, as you guys said, has all the pieces. They all kind of fit together. They play a style that works for the guys that they have. And so I know Shane's referenced it a few times, but Final Four good, national championship good. The tournament's a one and done. It's not easy to win those 4 games to get to that last weekend, but I've seen everybody at least a little bit, and there's no team that I feel like Arizona just doesn't match up with from a size, speed, athleticism perspective.
And that should tell you something, because Aaron watches, as you know, you watch, or as we all know, you watch more basketball than probably all of us combined, which says something. I just want to give a social media shout out. I want to thank our sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. They, during the game, threw out some interesting tweets. Go check them out, Backcourt MKTG. And by the way, even though we're going to keep going with Aaron, check him out on Twitter at Aaron_Torres and at Torres on Arizona. Great content there. And you tell it like it is. I mean, you don't, there's no BS. If U of A plays a bad game, you'll call them out, which we appreciate. We don't need, there's some out there who
made my life
sugarcoat.
easy so far. I haven't had to call them out too much this year. So
no,
shout out Tommy Lloyd and the boys. Yeah.
Yeah, and this team, they're fun to watch. I mean, they really are. And yes. I think, Shane, the one thing that I was thinking about when you watch Ben Mathurin and the fact that he has taken, and he was a good player last year, but he's taken that second year leap. And the first player that I think back to from taking a year 1 to a year 2 leap is Derek Williams in 2011, when he went from a good player as a freshman to the best player in the country. Am I going over the top there, Shane? I guess I'll go with both of you, but start there.
Yeah, no, I don't.
You guys, when you get done, when after Shane answers.
Yeah, I don't think you're going over the top there, Eric. I think, and I said this before the season started, that if Ben Mathurin and Azuolas Tubelis both take that next step, they look like they were on their way to stardom, both take that next step, that Arizona could be a top 25 team. I didn't think they'd be this good, and I think certainly their maturation, along with Christian Coloco coming out of nowhere, even though he had an off night against Tennessee. Kirk Carissa, we were able to see him for a full season. So yeah, I think Mathurin, he actually started the season off a little slow. He missed a lot of shots, but he has been their best player by far over the last 3 weeks or so. So he's been phenomenal. It really is a testament to his leadership. You have to have someone to take over the game late. It's nice to have a balanced roster, and Arizona does have that, but you have to have a guy who wants the ball in his hands in pressure situations late. And Mather didn't have that chance because he fouled out in this game. But that's where I was concerned that Arizona is really going to miss James Akinjo, because Akinjo, even though he was prone to missing a lot of shots, he wanted that pressure. He wanted that ball in his hand. So I thought, who is going to be that guy for Arizona this year? And it looks like it's going to be Ben Mathurin, even though Kirk Kriisa seems like he's content to be that guy, but maybe he shouldn't be. but
It took a
Mathurin
terrible
seems like
shot there, Shane. Terrible shot.
Yeah, he did.
Two.
You know, it's a great
horrendous
shot if it goes in. It's like if you're going to take that shot, it damn well better go in.
Yeah, damn well.
And,
you don't
and
pull up three, and
Yeah.
you have all the momentum. I mean, come on. So, Aaron, do you
Yeah.
think Ben Mathurin has made that second year leap like Derek Williams did in 2011?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's zero doubt. I mean, he was. I remember him being good last year. I don't remember him being like this. And again, you guys know the team better than I do. I just looked at some of the stats. He was even probably a little bit better last year than I remember. And I think part of it too was, as you guys said, James Akinjo was on the team. He was kind of the alpha. He kind of did what he had to do late. So here's my Ben Mathurin take, and it's a very like nerdy Arizona take, and I want your opinion. Okay, so obviously I'm a college hoops fan. I understand that guys got to go get their money. I never blame anybody for chasing your dream, playing in the NBA, whatever. I also think there are so many guys that if they could just understand the micro of one more year, okay, we're all a little bit older. We got a few gray hairs coming in on the side. When you're 18, you think that 1 year is the end of the world, right? If I say one more year, I'm a failure. So I texted this to somebody the other day, and they told me I was wrong, but I respect your guys' opinion more than that guy, so screw that guy. Josh Green, to me, is the epitome of if he had stayed one more year, I think he could have been an All-American, taken off. Like, all the tools were there. He just I don't think he really knew how to play basketball. Like, I'm sorry if that's, like, rude or disrespectful. Like, I think he was learning on the fly, and a lot was put on his plate. And I texted somebody, I said, Ben Mathurin is a slightly better version of what I think Josh Green would be if he had just come back for another year. Am I insane to say that? Tell me if I'm 100%
Arizona's had a number
wrong.
of those guys. Arizona's had a number of those guys. Kobe Simmons and Grant Jarrett are two other guys who I think left earlier than they probably should have. And I'd not compare any of those guys to Ben Mathurin, but yeah, certainly. And especially him, and I would say Nico Mannion as well. He
Bayless,
was
Jared Bayless, Marcus Williams
Bayless as well. Yeah, a lot of guys. And when Nico Mannion, I think because Nico was a projected lottery pick before he went to college, and then he ended up being a second-round guy, and now he's playing overseas. So who knows what would have happened if he had stayed in college. But, yeah, there are a number of examples with Arizona specifically, Aaron, where guys probably should have stayed at least one more year. And I think it's perfectly fair to put Josh Green into that mix.
Yeah, and I get – and like I said, I get about the money side. I also think that – and this is one thing, and I don't blame the guys that do this because we all do some kind of projection that – we talk about we shouldn't rank teams until the middle of the season. I don't think we should do mock drafts until the middle of the season. And it's no disrespect to the guys and girls that do them. It's a job. But, so much of it is projected off of high school stuff and this and that. And, like, Nico Mannion, Josh Green are perfect examples of, like, it only took a few games to be like, okay, they need a little bit more work than we probably thought. And so anyway, but Josh Green's like the example that I always use of all the tools were there, and he may still figure it out. I know he's playing a little bit with Dallas, and, he was a first-round pick, whatever. But I just felt like if that guy could have one more year, come back, be the dude, take over games, and then you're a lottery pick, and then your whole career is different. And I think that's what I think. And part of the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think that's the trajectory that Ben Mathurin is on. Like I said, could have gone, made some money, doing whatever, bouncing back and forth, whatever. He's going to be a top 10 pick this year. He's going to make a ton of money next year. He's going to be drafted in a spot that, by the way, when you get drafted that high, the team needs you to succeed. So you get more chances, you get more opportunities. It's just it's a little thing that has been kind of percolated up in my head over the last 3 or 4 games watching Ben Mathurin.
All right, so I got to ask you this because I get in some fights with some ASU buddies of mine in text threads about this. I think Arizona has potentially 4 first-round picks on the roster. I think Mathurin, of course, and I think if Tubelis, Koloko, and Dalen Terry, let's say, stay 2 to 3 more years, all 3 very well could be first-round picks. Do you think I'm off base there?
I will tell you, I remember, 2 things. One, I remember when Tubelis committed, talking to somebody that was on the staff at the time, who they said, we think he's as good as I don't know about, I forget what, he was in last year's class, so I forget who was in there. Cade Cunningham. I don't think they were saying he's Cade Cunningham, but they said if this kid was born in America, he's a top 15 prospect, he's a McDonald's All American, and whatever. And so I bring it up to say they love him. Two, I remember being at the Pangos All American camp in, must have been the summer of 2019, because it wasn't the summer of 2020. It was the year Dalen Terry was going into his senior year of high school. And one of the prominent NBA talent evaluators on social media that everybody would know if I said his name, and I don't want to put him out there because I don't know if he wants it out there. He goes, "That's my kind of guy." He was talking about Dalen Terry. He goes, "That's my kind of guy right there." And he made it a point after the game that we were watching to go talk to him, to go, tell me a little bit about your background, because I think that he really saw that, to your point, Eric, he might not be there. He might not be the quote unquote one and done, but that the size, frame, skills that he has as a 6'6", 6'7" ball handler, that he could be that guy one day. And so those two things stand out. With Koloko, I don't know. I love the NBA. I mean, I watch the NBA. I don't know enough about the modern game, what he has to do. Does he have to lose weight? Does he have to be able to step out? Can he defend? But I don't think the first three are crazy. And I don't see why Koloko can't. I mean, what is he, 7'1"? I mean, you just can't teach that size. He's obviously got skill. I don't know enough about Koloko, but I think the first three, zero doubt. Even Dalen Terry is a perfect example of, you might not. And by the way, Ben Mathurin was a perfect example last year of, you might not see it this second, but give it 3 or 4 years. College basketball is so different now. You're not drafting guys based on college production, but what they could be. And there's zero doubt that Dalen Terry is the kind of guy that
Yeah.
that NBA evaluators will love, and then it's just a matter of whether he can put it together when he's 23, 24, 25.
Shane loves this term. He's a glue guy. I love to say that about Sam Thomas on the women's team. Yeah, the one thing is, Aaron, I saw a Bleacher Report, I think it was mock draft for this year, and they had Koloko at 27. So you never know. I mean, I think that's a little high for this year, but I think he's a guy that needs to stay. I have one more question for you. And once again, thank you so much for joining Shane and I tonight. We saw the IARP's ruling about NC State come out the other day.
AARP,
You have been very outspoken as to your thoughts on potential penalties and everything like that. What do you think that ruling means for Arizona down the road?
It's really funny. I thought about that today, knowing I was coming on with you guys and knowing this question would probably come up. I don't think it's really fair. I don't want to speculate, and here's why. Because well, I don't even know if this is fair. Like the person that's in charge of the IARP basically said something to the effect of, we didn't want to punish the kids that are currently on the roster. But what I would also say is NC State was very proactive in getting rid of Mark Godfrey, getting rid of that assistant that were involved. And I've been outspoken about the proof that we have. I'm not saying what I know, what I don't know. The proof that we have of Sean Miller, I don't know if it was justified, the public kind of, tarring and feathering that he's taken over the last 3-4 years. And the three of us have talked about this on the podcast many times, and I always appreciate you coming on. I don't know if it will somehow be held against Arizona that they did not immediately get rid of him, that they did not immediately fire him. And I think one ruling is really hard to really say. I would also say he is gone. There was the voluntary postseason ban, and I don't know if Arizona is going to be smart enough when they go in front of the IARP to explain this, but that was an NCAA tournament team. And I think one thing that tends to happen, like Auburn, they put out their NCAA tournament ban last year at a time when they knew they weren't making the NCAA tournament, and they weren't the first ones. LSU football 2 years ago, new sanctions was coming, and they went 5-5, I think, in the COVID year, and they were like, we don't want to play a bowl game anyway, so we're going to give ourselves a little postseason ban here, no big deal, whatever. And so I don't know if Arizona's smart enough to kind of prove the point of hey, we would have been an NCAA tournament team, and we sacrificed that because we knew we knew we kind of screwed up, whatever. Sean's gone now. They did fire him. I don't know if it's going to be held against him that it took 3-4 years. Obviously, we know what happened with Book Richardson immediately following the arrest back in whatever it was, 2017. So I think just having that one ruling is probably a little bit tough to know. And this is something I think the three of us have talked about. all the times that I've been on with you guys is I think it's tough because every situation is so different, right? Um, Louisville clean house, right? Kansas kept Bill Self and pretended like everything was fine. I'm trying to think there, assistant coach, USC got rid of Tony Bland, but the infrastructure was still there. And so I just think it's hard to know based off one ruling. But I would also say if that ruling is reflective of what the IARP is doing, does that mean more heavy punishment for Sean Miller and potentially Book Richardson all these years later? And maybe Arizona gets spared a little bit? I don't know. And like I said, I know you guys, I know how passionate Arizona fans are, and I know how passionate your guys' listeners are. And I don't want to just start throwing out speculation, but the fact that you did do a postseason ban in the middle, of an NCAA tournament caliber season, I think helps. The fact that you got rid of Sean Miller helps. The fact that nobody that I know of that was on that staff or roster or anything is currently in the program probably helps. And now we just wait and see.
Shane, final thoughts tonight and going forward.
Yeah, just one more thing to add to what Aaron said. The fact that the IARP said regarding the NC State situation, they didn't want to do a postseason ban in part because they didn't want to punish the kids currently on the roster. Now, I know NC State situation is apples and oranges compared to Arizona's, but that maybe is promising, especially considering I don't think NC State did a self-imposed ban and Arizona did. So that potentially promising. Maybe, who's to say? Well, hopefully we'll find out soon. Hopefully they'll be tournament eligible this season, both in terms of NCAA violations and in terms of COVID. We will see. But yeah, I again reiterate what I said. Nothing's changed about my opinion of this team. They've convinced me they're championship contenders. They did that with their win over Illinois. Nothing's changed since then. I think they're going to get better as the season goes on because remember, this is a team that's still coming together with a new coach and new system, a lot of new pieces. So I think most teams get better from beginning of the season to the end of the season, but I think that the ceiling is higher for Arizona. So that's encouraging for me. Stay healthy, hopefully get Kim Aiken back, and this team should keep on rolling. I'm excited to watch the UCLA game and USC games, and hopefully they will happen as scheduled.
Well, Aaron Torres, you are one of the most intelligent basketball minds that Shane and I know, and we always appreciate you joining us here on the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, Matt Moreno from Go Easy Cats coming up next. Want to thank, once again, our sponsor, Backcourt Marketing, for all that they do for the show. I want to thank our producer, Chris, and All AZ Sports for what they do. And Aaron, once again, thanks for hanging out with us, talking about this kind of a depressing loss with the officials. But thanks for hanging out with us, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
A depressing loss is losing by 30 where you're just the inferior team. I'm not an Arizona fan. I take it as a net positive, but it sounds like you guys have more guests coming up. Thank you guys as always. Happy New Year to you guys, Christmas, all that good stuff. Appreciate your guys' support, and I'll bail out so you can continue the conversation. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, Aaron. Much appreciated as always.